Smackdown. Today I'm looking at the blend shapes from Apple's AR kit. That's the technology that powers the iPhone's true depth sensor. And I'm remapping those blend shapes onto Mixamo's blend shapes, which are being puppeted in real time. And, judge for yourself. These two systems are mostly compatible, not entirely compatible, but that's not a coincidence since both systems are designed for motion capture. Now, my name is Wet Circuit. I'm the host of Cutscene Artist, and my avatar puppet is a Fuse figure with the stock Mixamo blend shapes. And I'm transmitting the shapes live from my iPhone 10 using an app called FaceCap and Banaflex blend shape remapper tool, well, the script, that's on his GitHub. So at the risk of starting off with a rant, about once a week, one of my friends who sort of knows what I do but not really will send me a link to some new character generator system, and it's always an RPG race and faction generator. And I'm not trashing these systems. They do what they do, but sorry, friends, these character generators are useless to me. I straight up will never dress my characters in medieval peasant garb or in a druid monk robe. And I will never want to turn any of my characters into an orc or a fat goblin in the middle of a scene. Like, that's just never going to happen. These blend shapes are not for animation. They are usually very broad, and they're used to turn a figure into a different species. Now, you probably have, like, one human head that you can give green skin and pointy ears, and suddenly it's an orc or a goblin or a whatever. And then maybe you have one slider to make them skinny or obese, and that's it. That's your character. You can't even make variations in human ethnicity because you have like the one Caucasian head and a skin color that's like multiplied on top of the textures. If you're looking to design your own figure system for RPG, this isn't how it's done anyway. So it's one blend shape created from, baked out of a figure. Blend shape is added onto the figure while you play. So that's not what we're doing here. Obviously, that's not what we want. And these kinds of like species blend shapes, they're not for live animation. So the next kind of like really common blend shapes are when a game character needs to show their basic emotional state with an expression. And you'll see this on 2D characters in visual novels, but a lot of 3D characters have them too as blend shapes. And let me explain what these are. So there's no subtlety about these expressions because this is a way for the game to give the player feedback, and it needs to be clear and it needs to be unambiguous. So what happens is a player comes up and they interact with an NPC, like a computer-controlled character. That character is going to flash an expression to reflect a change in their game state. And if they like what you said, they'll smile at you. If they don't like what you said, they'll give you a stink face or a sad face, or it's kind of like communicating with a toddler. Like, they don't tell you in words, so you have to kind of infer what this character likes and doesn't like through this non-verbal feedback. Okay, so again, now this is fine as a game mechanic. This is not character animation. So grown-up adults do not make these huge theatrical facial expressions, but babies do. These are the ones that are apparently hardwired into our brains, and this is an evolutionary way to keep your baby alive, because your baby can communicate with these 7 or 8 basic expressions, and every human being knows what these expressions mean just automatically. But now, once again, there's no subtlety here. So what Preston Blair did was he wrote a book called Cartoon Animation, and in this book he just cataloged like everything that he knew, and it's an amazing book. He shows like hand shapes and like how to design a cute character. This is like amazing, an amazing textbook. But also in this, he describes the 10 phonemes, and what he did was he sat down with a tape recorder and he just played it over and over and over, and he worked out the fewest number of mouth shapes he had to animate to do a proper lip sync. And it was only about 10 shapes, and it covers like every sound you can make in English. And I don't really know if it works for other languages. I assume you can fake it. But there's only really like 10 Preston Blair phonemes, and sometimes they're called visemes because the blend shapes will be the visual representation of your mouth shape when you make the sound, which is the phoneme. So super useful, especially if you're not doing motion capture, because you can translate this into lip sync. So now finally, let's move on to the last set of blend shapes, which are designed for facial motion capture, and that's what we're talking about today. So this is a system that started based on FACS, and that stands for Facial Action Coding System. And this was designed in the late 60s by a Swedish anatomist, and basically he broke down every muscle in your face that is triggered when you make an expression, and he broke each one down into its own action unit, and then he rated like how strongly that unit was activated on a scale of A to E, because science. And in 2005 at GDC, a company called PrimeSense showed off a prototype of a markerless body tracker for the Xbox, and this eventually becomes the Kinect for Xbox 360. And Microsoft pushed it so big that retailers, it went to like every store. I'm not sure that it actually went to consumers, but Microsoft got it entered into the Guinness Book of World Records as the fastest selling consumer electronic entertainment device ever. And that lasted for like a New York minute. But the Kinect had no games, and people thought it was spying on them, like Alexis. And if you ever like tried to work with a Kinect, then you know how hard it was to get it to actually like send a signal to your computer. But so the Kinect died as a commercial device, but it kind of lived on with hardcore geeks and nerds. We're doing esoteric, academic, experimental stuff with it. And out of this community comes face tracking software called FaceShift. So now Apple buys PrimeSense, the makers of the Kinect, in 2013, and it's all very hush-hush and secret Apple stuff. And then in 2015, Apple bought FaceShift, and so a lot of us knew what was coming. Like I even like posted this on my blog. And even though I have no connections to that, like they were, I just was like excited that this was coming. So then we all know what came next. The iPhone 10 was released from Apple with the True Depth sensor, and this is essentially a Kinect running on the iPhone. All right, let's get back on topic. So jump back to 2013, and in a parallel dimension unrelated to Phase Shift or the Kinect, a company called Mixamo shows its new software and subscription service at, I think it's a Unity event. And Mixamo has a triple header suite of facial capture software, and it starts with the facial capture software was called Face Plus, and it ran on a regular camera, like the web camera on your laptop. So you didn't need a special sensor. And the figures came from Mixamo Fuse. And then the third leg of the triangle was the Mixamo Auto Rigger. And that's where you got the Face Plus blend shapes on your Fuse figures. It was a good system, but it was like incredibly expensive. Like, people don't remember this system was like $2,000 or $3,000 a year. I think you could get, if you paid in advance, you could get the full shebang and all the software for like $1,200 a year. Like, we all know what happened next. So Adobe bought Mixamo and kept it largely intact as a company so that they could build new 3D apps for Adobe. Meanwhile, they made Fuse and Face Plus free while they lasted, and the Mixamo Auto Rigger is still kind of like an industry standard at this point. So Mixamo didn't really die. It still exists inside Adobe, and just recently they updated the Auto Rigger, and now you can send your Fuse figure with Mixamo animations to Adobe Aero, which is their AR viewer app. So you can have, vampires dancing in the park, or Nana dancing samba in the kitchen. This is free, by the way. So, I don't know how else to describe this other than to just show you the pictures and kind of show you the words of the list of blend shapes. It's pretty well organized on the iPhone side, a little less well organized on the Mixamo side, but we'll get to that. Now, what I recommend that you do if you have any question about which blend shape is supposed to do what, or how they're supposed to blend together, just do screen grabs just like this, where you set the blend shapes and then you look at what they are designed to do. What I've done is I've gone ahead and put together the full list of each one side by side. So we're just going to compare. I don't know how else to do this. So on the iPhone side, we start with the brows. It basically goes like top to bottom. So we start with the eyebrows. On the Mixamo side, there's the same grouping of eyebrow shapes, but there's 2 extras that I've marked here in red. And on the iPhone side, brow inner up is 1 unilateral shape, and brows in left and right is broken into 2 different shapes on the iPhone side. I'm sorry, on the Mixamo side. After that, we have the eye looks, and I'm sorry, I'm just changing something behind the scenes. We have these eye look blend shapes, and there's no equivalent on the Mixamo side. So what happens is when your eyes look up, the upper eyelid is dragged upwards, and when you look down, both eyelids actually shift down a little bit. And as you can see, like when the eyes look left and right, again, the eyelids are sort of distorting because of the eyeball underneath. Now, on the Mixamo side, eyes are not blend shapes, eyes are bones. So there's no corresponding shape. So yeah, don't wire those up. After that, we get the eye blink, squint, and eye wide, and it's all really convenient here together. On the Mixamo side, it's scattered around. Blink is its own word, but eyes wide, that one, they started with eyes. And then eyes squint is just down at the bottom under squint. Then comes the cheek puff and the nose sneer. So that's this expression, right? And, oh, and also cheek puff. I don't even know if you can see that. Again, this is one that's unilateral on the iPhone, but split into two on Mixamo. And there's no cheek squint. There is a nose scrunch. Under the jaw, again, like some of these line up and some don't. So jaw forward, jaw left, jaw right. These are one-to-one, jaw forward, left and right. There is no jaw backwards from the iPhone. These, with the rotate, put a pin in that. We're going to come back to these. They are important. And the other issue is jaw open versus mouth open on the Mixamo side. So I route jaw open to mouth open on the Mixamo side. And I'm just going to skip ahead real quick because there's something called mouth close. And it's a problem shape that there is no equivalent on Mixamo. So what you can see is mouth close is not just the jaw hinging shut. Mouth closed is the jaw open with the lips together. And when it's viewed on its own, it looks very strange, like the lower lip is covering up half the face. But that's how it's built because it's designed to be used with another blend shape at the same time. Now, I think the Mixamo system comes close with what is called mouth up, but it's not perfect. So what I do in the FaceCap app is I just kind of, I fake it. But now that you know what mouth close looks like, you're either going to have to build that as an extra blend shape or make do with your mapping. Now let's back up real quick to, these are always like, what? Mouth funnel and mouth pucker. Who, wah? Okay, so these correspond with mouth narrow and mouth whistle. Again, who, wah, huh? Okay, so it's not that difficult. The one on top is bigger, and mouth funnel is like, ow. Okay, so ow. Mouth is open and you're making an O. And then mouth pucker is mwah. Your mouth is closed and it's coming wide. Ow. Mwah. And over on the Mixamo side, it's the same thing, except it's split into right and left, so you can never see these shapes on their own. So on the iPhone, it's mouth funnel. On Mixamo, it's mouth narrow. Okay, that's that shape. On the iPhone, it's mouth pucker. On Mixamo, it's mouth whistle. And as you notice, the pucker is completely closed. Mouth whistle is not completely closed, so these are not quite one-to-one. But it does work. Now, we have a few mouths here, and this is another confusing naming system. So mouth left and mouth right, I route to mid-mouth left, mid-mouth right. And I think if you look at the photos or you look at your own models, I think you'll agree that that's probably correct. And what is roll and what is shrug? So roll is roll under like this. And you probably can't see it very well, but basically like if you roll your lips in towards your teeth, that's roll. On the Mixamo side, that's lip in. So lip in, roll. And then shrug is the other one, it's out. On Mixamo, it's lip out. On iPhone, it's shrug. And that gesture is just like... The three they've grouped here are facial muscles: smile, frown, and dimple. And so you know what smile is, the corners of the mouth go up. And you know what frown is, the corners of the mouth go down. Can I make it actually do that? I don't know. Anyway, dimple is like in between. So dimple is like almost straight across. It's like a wide. Okay? So smile routes to smile, frown routes to frown, and dimple, what did I route dimple to? I actually think I routed dimple to mouth mid right and mid left, and I'm going to have to double check that. Mid mouth, right and left. I'm going to have to double check that. And, you know, you shouldn't take my word for it. You should figure this out too. Okay, so I'll just keep going. Mouth up lip, mouth, upper right and upper left, and lower right, lower left. Those are easy to figure out. Now, the last ones that are a little weird, and we're almost out of the woods: mouth press and mouth stretch. And they look not unsimilar to the smile, frown, and dimple, but the difference is that these are muscles that come from your neck and jaw, not your face. So that's why there's a different blend shape here, because it's actually activated by a different muscle in your face. And since it's basically activated on your neck and jaw, Mixamo contains these two here with these jaw rotate Y and jaw rotate Z. And again, there's a little bit of, you could take the pictures and look at what you end up getting. I think this is pretty close. Let me see if I can show you which is which. So this is these are the mouth press, and these are the mouth stretch. Okay, on the Mixamo side, they are again like all clustered right together. So it's the rotate Y and left and right, but these are actually switched because of how Mixamo names the left and the right are switched. So you're going to have to go in and make sure that these mirror each other correctly. Okay, our last blend shapes are the tongue. And on the iPhone, the tongue sticks out, and on Mixamo, the tongue comes up as if you are talking. So I went ahead and wired it up. I don't know if you can see it or not, but I went ahead and wired it up, and it makes no sense, but I did it anyway. And that is it, kids. From this point on, you can do this on your own. We are done. So that is my iPhone 10 versus Mixamo Blend Shape Smackdown. And thank you for watching this very long video. Now, here's a little trivia. I was the onstage VJ at the Connect launch in Times Square in New York City. And there was like, it was like on all the jumbotrons, and then there was like a 1,000 flash mob dancers or something ridiculous like that. They set up a stage in the middle of Broadway and like shut down all of Times Square, and all I remember is that it was like 4 degrees out, and I got yelled at for wearing a coat. Yeah, that's corporate for you. So Microsoft basically sabotaged the Kinect because once it was no longer like, well, once it was never the hot consumer toy, and people were trying to connect it to their computers, Microsoft was like, well, then we're going to change the margins on this and we're going to charge you more money. So they had like two different systems, a cheaper one for the Xbox and a more expensive one that you could actually use on your computer and whatever. Don't cry for Microsoft because Apple stole their Kinect. There's actually a new version of the Kinect. It's called Kinect Azure. And it's manufactured by Microsoft, so Apple can't buy it. And it's only available right now in the United States and China, but it's coming to Germany, Japan, and the UK in March. And they still don't know what to do with it. So Microsoft is like releasing the SDK and absolutely no software because it's like a sensor in search of a product. So it's a 4K Kinect with a gyro sensor for $400. Meanwhile, a refurbished iPhone 10 is $600, and in another 6 months it'll be even cheaper. So